The third episode of House of the Dragon, Season 3, introduces us to the new Queen of King's Landing, her new challenges, and the story behind a major twist. At the same time, it almost feels like Vaemond Velaryon, spirit has possessed Corlys. Throughout the episode, we watch Rhaenyra struggle with her coronation, and it makes you wonder if victory feels like this, what would defeat look like? The episode opens with a cold open. Daemon arrives with 3 dragons to inform Ormond Hightower that Rhaenyra has become queen and that the Hightowers should return to Oldtown. Obviously, Lord Ormond Hightower has no choice but to bend the knee, because Vermithor alone is enough to wipe out his army of 15,000 soldiers. However, when Daemon demands Daeron, the youngest son of Viserys, and Alicent, Ormond sends Daeron with him. Now, this confused even the fans, because earlier this season, in episode 1, we were shown someone else dressed in green alongside Ormond Hightower. But later, it becomes clear that this boy is not Daeron. The person we saw in Season 3 Episode 1 was actually Daeron. That means Ormond Hightower has openly challenged Rhaenyra. As I said, this entire episode focuses on Rhaenyra's struggles. Now let's move on to Rhaenyra's first problem. The crown has no gold left. Technically, there should have been plenty of gold, but as soon as Rhaenyra becomes Queen of King's Landing, she discovers that all the wealth Viserys left behind has disappeared. 3 out of the 4 portions of Viserys's treasury had been moved by Tywin Lannister to the Hightowers, the Lannisters, and the Iron Bank. The remaining portion that was left in King's Landing had already been spent during Aegon II's reign. That's why Rhaenyra has nothing left. Now this is the exact same problem that Aegon II faced last season. What are the people supposed to eat? Last season, there was the Gullet blockade. This season, the money has run out. On top of all that, you've probably noticed the rats. Rats have always been present throughout the Red Keep. However, Rhaenyra comes up with a solution. She serves rats to the nobles of King's Landing, who did not oppose Aegon II's claim to the throne, and takes their gold in return. Now, it's hard to say how much this solves the rat problem. But as Daemon said, there is no benefit in upsetting the nobles or worrying about the poor. However, Rhaenyra knows exactly what happens when you turn the common people against you. This may be a short-term solution to the hunger crisis among the people, but Rhaenyra is slowly making everyone her enemy. And the biggest sign of that begins with her own hand, Corlys Velaryon. As Corlys told Alan and Adam in the previous episode, he has nothing left to give them except his name. That's why, in this episode, he tells Rhaenyra that he wants his illegitimate sons to be legitimized by the queen herself so that he can pass Driftmark on to Alan. Now, this creates a serious problem for Rhaenyra. The entire realm already knows that Rhaenyra's sons are illegitimate. If she legitimizes Corlys's illegitimate sons immediately after becoming queen, all of Westeros will once again start questioning the legitimacy of her own sons. So this becomes a major problem, and its biggest side effect is seen when Corlys, right in the middle of the Red Keep, loudly calls Rhaenyra's sons illegitimate. We'll find out later what impact this incident has, but it certainly must have brought some peace to Vaemond's spirit. Now let's move on to Rhaenyra's next enemy, the Faith. Septon Eustace refuses to perform Rhaenyra's coronation. He says that he will not crown Rhaenyra until he has seen Aegon II's dead body. Rhaenyra tells him that she now understands the Faith is not on her side. At this point, Septon Eustace warns her that making the Faith her enemy would be a mistake. He also makes it clear that he does not associate dragons with his god. Because of this, Rhaenyra realizes that the Faith will never stand with her. That's why she sets out to win the hearts of the small folk of Westeros. Now, let's move on to Rhaenyra's third problem. Right now, Rhaenyra is in power, and she holds that power because she has not only dragons but also dragon riders. Now, things work a little differently for the dragon riders. When someone is knighted, they are given a unique title. For example, Ulf is asked what name he would like to take. At first, he says Ulf Targaryen, but instead, he is given the title Sir Ulf the White. Hugh is named Sir Hugh the Hammer, and Adam is given the title Sir Adam of Hull, even though he wanted to carry the Velaryon name. Now, you can already see 2 problems here. Ulf and Adam wanted greater names, but they didn't receive them. Meanwhile, Hugh Hammer tells Rhaenyra something interesting. He says that his wife is not in King's Landing, and is probably in Tumbleton. Now look at this. Later in the episode, a dragon keeper informs Rhaenyra that Ormond Hightower has established control over Tumbleton. That means Rhaenyra will have to attack Tumbleton, where Hugh's relatives already live. This connection is dangerous for Rhaenyra. All three of her dragon riders are becoming a headache for her in one way or another. But if you think these are Rhaenyra's only problems, then you're forgetting the Dragonstone Small Council, also known as the Black Council. When her hand, Corlys Velaryon, asks whether she plans to bring her Dragonstone Small Council here, Rhaenyra says no. She no longer wants anything to do with them, and honestly, that makes sense. Throughout this entire episode, Rhaenyra is constantly listening to everyone's problems and meeting with everyone, even though she has only recently lost her son, Jaehaerys. At one point, when Alicent tells her that she will remain a prisoner until both of her sons are dead, Rhaenyra replies, "Now you understand how I feel." Daemon is the most relaxed character in this episode. The happiness from the previous episode is still visible on his face, as he excitedly dreams alongside Rhaenyra of rebuilding Old Valyria, stretching from Westeros to Essos and beyond. Daemon also tells Rhaenyra that Baela saw the decaying body of Sunfire. Now, Sunfire was severely wounded during the battle at Rook's Rest, where Meleys's dead body was lying only a short distance away. So, Baela should have seen two rotting bodies there. However, Daemon's next journey is going to be interesting. Rhaenyra sends him to the Vale to ask Lady Jane Arryn why she never sent her army to help them. Now, from the previous episode, we already know that Daemon's daughter, Rhaena, is in the Vale, along with the wild dragon, Sheepstealer. So Daemon's journey to the Vale is going to be quite interesting. Alinda, whom Mysaria sent to King's Landing last season to deliver Rhaenyra's messages there, has now returned and is back with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra's unresolved grief keeps making her see Jace's face. So, friends, that was the breakdown of House of the Dragon, Season 3 Episode 3. A new villain has stepped into the story. Rhaenyra is gaining new titles, and Daemon is reunited with his daughter. Episode 4 of House of the Dragon, Season 3, introduces us to Ormond Hightower and his new strategies. Meanwhile, things are not looking good in Tumbleton. Aegon II is reunited with the body of his beautiful dragon, Sunfire, while struggling with the growing problems of the smallfolk. And Daemon returns with gold and lies. After the intro, we're taken to the most important location of this season, Tumbleton. The Hightower army has occupied the town, and soldiers are entering every home because Ormond Hightower has to feed and supply his army of 15,000 men. Here we meet Hugh Hammer's wife, who is living with her brother, his wife, and their children. It is this connection to Tumbleton that leads Hugh to Rhaenyra, asking to go to Tumbleton alongside Ulf. Later in the episode, a soldier from the Hightower army assaults Hugh's wife and his brother's wife. That alone is more than enough reason for Hugh and his dragon, Vermeether, to unleash their fury. Now, let's talk about Ulf. As we saw in the previous episode, Ulf wanted the Targaryen name. Before that, he had even talked about wanting a castle. In this episode, he goes to meet the same friends who, back in Season 2, treated him like royalty because they believed he had Targaryen blood. The truth is, when Ulf came to Dragonstone to claim a dragon, he had no idea that claiming one would basically make him an employee of the crown. Now that Ulf has arrived at the Red Keep, he has finally found himself a job, but along with it comes constant humiliation. On top of that, Ulf tells Rhaenyra that someone has written Queen of Bastards on a wall. This is something that will eventually backfire on Rhaenyra, because it prompts her to send the Gold Cloaks into action. As a result, King's Landing is now witnessing police brutality. Meanwhile, Lord Ormond Hightower has tightened his grip on Tumbleton and its castle. Lord and Lady Footly even tell Ormond that Tumbleton is a market town known only for trade. They never expected to be dragged into a war. This is exactly what Rhaenyra pointed out in the previous episode. Why would the Hightowers seize Tumbleton? There can only be one answer. Ormond Hightower wants Rhaenyra to send her dragons to Tumbleton, so that Aemond, riding Vhagar, can destroy them. It's the exact same strategy that was used last season at the battle at Rook's Rest, where Rhaenyra lost Rhaenys and her dragon, Meleys. On top of that, if Rhaenyra sends her dragons to Tumbleton, and they burn the town to the ground, she will be the one who looks like the villain throughout the realm. Because of that, the other noble houses could end up turning against Rhaenyra. Now, Rhaenyra understands exactly what's happening. Poor Grand Maester Orwyle even suggests that instead of sending dragons, she should send Daemon's Riverlands army to Tumbleton. But then comes a twist. Aemond is nowhere to be found. Even Vhagar has completely disappeared. That means Ormond's gamble is now at serious risk. At the same time, Hugh has already arrived near Tumbleton with his dragon, Vermithor, to keep watch over the town. Throughout the episode, we're reminded that Daron, the youngest son of Viserys and Alicent, has been raised in Old Town under the care of the Hightowers from the very beginning. Alicent even says in this episode that while her other two sons are true Targaryens, she wanted one son to become a Hightower, and that's exactly what Ormond is doing. He is teaching Daron the customs and values of House Hightower. But this is also where Ormond's hypocrisy becomes obvious. The entire time, he teaches Daron how to treat those beneath him and how to maintain composure in high-pressure situations. Yet despite all this talk about honor, his house conveniently forgets that they once bent the knee to Viserys when he declared Rhaenyra as his chosen heir. Here, Ormond even claims that the Hightowers are better than the Targaryens. Now let's move on to Aegon II. Alongside Larys Strong, Aegon II arrives at Rook's Rest, where Sunfyre, Meleys, and Vhagar fought. There, he finally comes face to face with the body of his dragon, Sunfyre. Now you'll notice that Sunfyre's body isn't decaying, because later we also see Meleys's body, and it's clearly decomposing. On top of that, Aegon II holds Sunfyre and says that his dragon is still alive. However, he can't reveal himself. By now, this episode makes one thing very clear: Aegon II truly loves his dragon, Sunfyre, and it's not just love. The bond Aegon II shares with Sunfyre is stronger than the connection many dragon riders have with their own dragons. For now, Aegon II stays at Rook's Rest, spending his time beside his dragon. It also seems like Aegon II is finally paying attention to the small folk. Near Rook's Rest, he sees a child looting the bodies of fallen soldiers. He questions what has happened at Rook's Rest, realizing that the child is hungry, the people are hungry, and that war creates unimaginable hardships for everyone. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra is creating more problems across the realm. In the previous episode, she took gold from the nobles to feed the poor, but she doesn't have enough coins to keep feeding everyone in the long run. As I mentioned earlier, her actions have even led to police brutality. So while Aegon II is beginning to understand the struggles of the people on the ground, Rhaenyra's own problems inside the Red Keep continue to grow. At this point, Rhaenyra restores Grand Maester Orwell to her small council, and on Mysaria's advice, she appoints a new Master of Coin, Torrhen Manderly. Alan of Hull, despite still being illegitimate, remains loyal to Rhaenyra. When he suggests bringing cats into the Red Keep to deal with the rat problem, Rhaenyra rewards him with a seat on her small council. On top of that, Rhaenyra shows Alan Viserys's model of Old Valyria from Season 1. Here, Rhaenyra says something truly interesting. She explains that Viserys was recreating Old Valyria to remind himself that even the greatest empire can fall. Now let's talk about Daemon. Daemon travels to the Vale to collect the gold from Lady Jane Arryn. As he's leaving, Caraxes senses Daemon's daughter, Rhaena, and leads him straight to her. It almost seems like Daemon trusts his long dragon a little too much, because he follows Caraxes right into the cave it leads him to. But it was an incredible moment. After a long time, Daemon is finally reunited with his daughter, Rhaena Targaryen. Rhaena's current appearance looks remarkably similar to Nettles, the original rider of Sheepstealer, in the books. However, Rhaena tells her father that she claimed the wild dragon, Sheepstealer, by feeding it sheep. But when exactly did that happen? If anything, it was Sheepstealer that treated Rhaena to a mutton feast. On top of all this, Daemon's problems have only grown. He knows that Rhaenyra believes Jacaerys died because of Sheepstealer and its rider. That means she will never spare Rhaena. At the same time, Rhaena has no intention of returning. And here, Daemon lies to Rhaenyra. Near the cave, he kills the shepherd and brings his body back to Rhaenyra, taking away her chance for revenge. This creates a new emptiness inside Rhaenyra, making her believe that her son died because a shepherd claimed a wild dragon. Now, speaking of Aemond, neither Criston Cole nor Gwaine Hightower finds him at Harrenhal. On top of that, neither of them even knows that Rhaenyra has already taken control of King's Landing. Meanwhile, Alys Rivers seems to have a very different agenda at Harrenhal. Last season, Alys guided Daemon through his dreams. But this season, it almost seems like she's trying to claim Harrenhal for herself. She deliberately doesn't tell Criston Cole or Gwaine that Aemond is actually at Harrenhal. And honestly, I'm pretty sure Vhagar hasn't disappeared. She's probably just so well hidden in the grass that no one can spot her. Now let's talk about Alicent. In this episode, Alicent once again does something we first saw in Season 1, she scratches her fingernails whenever she's under stress. She's worried about what will happen to Daeron. But another problem appears on top of that. Helaena is pregnant. Now, that's a bit shocking, but it does make sense. Obviously, the child would be Aegon II's, but that's exactly why it's a problem. If Helaena gives birth to another son, that child would become a direct challenge to Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. And the chances are very slim that Rhaenyra would show him any mercy. Coming back to Ormond, it's now clear that he has started dreaming of becoming king himself. By placing Daeron on the throne, he plans to establish him as nothing more than a puppet king. Before we finish, let's also talk about the sword. The sword Ormond gives Daeron to kill Hugh Hammer's brother-in-law is made of Valyrian steel. You might be surprised to learn just how many Valyrian steel swords disappear throughout the Dance of the Dragons. So, friends, that was the breakdown of House of the Dragon, Season 3 Episode 4. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.